Did you ever get that feeling in history class? Like you were only getting half the story? Like the textbook was a little too neat, a little too clean? Well, you were right. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the chapters they deliberately left out. We're diving into the dark history they never wanted you to learn in school. Let's start with a war you've probably never heard of, but one that shaped the modern world. It's called the Secret War in Laos, from 1964 to 1973. While the Vietnam War was raging next door, the CIA was conducting the largest covert operation in its history. They armed and trained the Hmong people to fight against communist forces, turning Laos into the most heavily bombed country per capita in history. More bombs were dropped on Laos than on Germany and Japan combined during World War II. Millions of unexploded bombs still litter the countryside today. A deadly legacy of a war that, for decades, the US government denied even existed. Imagine living your life, knowing a single misstep could be your last, because of a secret war fought half a century ago. This wasn't in your textbook, was it? Now, let's talk about heroes. We all know about the great inventors, right? Thomas Edison, Alexander Graham Bell. But what about the brilliant minds they overshadowed, or even stole from? Meet Nikola Tesla. This Serbian-American genius was the true father of our modern electrical age. Alternating current, or AC power, which powers our homes and cities. That was Tesla radio. He filed the patents years before Marconi, who is often credited with its invention. Tesla envisioned a world with free, wireless energy for everyone, but his grand ideas threatened powerful interests, like those of his one-time employer, Thomas Edison, a ruthless businessman, launched a public smear campaign to discredit Tesla's AC system, even publicly electrocuting animals to prove its dangers. In the end, Tesla died, broke and alone, his name nearly erased from the very history he helped create. He was a visionary, pushed into the shadows because his ideas were too revolutionary, too generous for a world driven by profit. And it's not just individuals. Entire movements have been sanitized. You've learned about the civil rights movement, about Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream. But did they teach you about the COINTEL program? This was a series of secret, and often illegal, projects conducted by the FBI, aimed at surveilling, infiltrating, and disrupting domestic political organizations. Their targets included civil rights leaders, feminist organizations, and anti-war. The FBI used psychological warfare, forged documents, and planted false media stories to discredit leaders, create paranoia, and destroy these movements from the inside out. They sent anonymous letters to Martin Luther King Jr., trying to blackmail him, and even suggesting he'd take his own life. This wasn't just surveillance. It was a systematic attempt by a government agency to crush dissent and silence voices demanding change. The history books give you the marches and the speeches, but they leave out the state-sponsored sabotage that tried to stop them at every turn. Let's travel back further, to the age of exploration. We celebrate figures like Christopher Columbus as brave adventurers who discovered new worlds. But this narrative completely erases the brutal reality for the indigenous people who were already there. Columbus's arrival in the Americas marked the beginning of a genocide. His own journals described the Taino people of the Caribbean as gentle and intelligent. Yet in the name of golden conquest, he and his men unleashed unimaginable cruelty. Slavery, torture, and mass murder decimated the native population. On Hispaniola alone, the Taino population went from hundreds of thousands to just a few hundred within a couple of decades. The age of discovery was, for millions, an age of terror and extermination. We're taught to celebrate the discovery, but we're not taught to mourn the discovered. Speaking of erased truths, have you ever heard of the Tulsa Race Massacre of 1921? For a long time, you wouldn't have. In Tulsa, Oklahoma, there was a thriving, affluent, African-American community known as Black Wall Street. It was one of the wealthiest black communities in the United States, but in a single, horrific, 24-hour period, it was burned to the ground by a white mob, sparked by a false allegation. Thousands of white residents, some deputized and armed by city officials, descended on the Greenwood district. They looted and set fire to homes and businesses, and murdered hundreds of black residents. For decades, this event was actively suppressed. It was scrubbed from official records, ignored by newspapers, and omitted from history lessons. Even in Oklahoma, it was a deliberate, collective act of forgetting, an attempt to bury a national shame. It's only in recent years that the story of Tulsa has resurfaced, demanding that we confront this horrifying chapter of American history. And this pattern of suppression isn't just an American phenomenon. Think about the Belgian Congo under King Leopold II. He presented himself to the world as a great philanthropist, claiming his mission in the Congo was to bring civilization and end the slave trade. The reality was a nightmare. Leopold ran the Congo Free State as his own personal fiefdom, a massive labor camp built on the brutal exploitation of the Congolese people for rubber and ivory. His private army would enforce impossible quotas with mutilation, torture, and mass killings. Demographers estimate that as many as 10 million people, perhaps half the population, perished during his reign of terror. This was not a state-sponsored colonization. It was the private enterprise of one man, resulting in one of history's greatest mass murders. Yet, his name is often just a footnote, if he's mentioned at all. These stories aren't just trivia. They are crucial pieces of our shared past that were intentionally hidden. Why? Because history isn't just a record of what happened. It's a story we tell ourselves about who we are. And the people in power have always understood that if you can control the story, you can control the present and the future. By simplifying narratives, creating flawless heroes, and erasing uncomfortable truths, they create a version of history that justifies the status quo, that discourages questioning, and that keeps us from understanding. The true roots of the problems we face derive from systemic inequality to geopolitical conflicts. The real history, the messy, dark, complicated history, is far more interesting and infinitely more important. It shows us that progress is not inevitable, that heroes are flawed, and that even the greatest nations have skeletons in their closets. Learning these truths isn't about feeling guilty or pointing fingers. It's about developing critical thinking. It's about learning to question the official story, to seek out the voices that have been silenced, and to understand the world with a clearer, more complete perspective. The past is never truly past, and the shadows it casts still touch us today. The only way to step into a brighter future is to have the courage to look into the darkness of our history. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey down the rabbit hole. If you found this eye-opening, please hit that like button and subscribe for more hidden stories. Let me know in the comments which piece of hidden history shocked you the most. Until next time, keep questioning everything.